Ohio with the 12th Armored Division. My name is Jake Fortenberry, and I'm interviewing Edgar
Bealer.
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 Sir, if you can start off just telling me when you were born and where you were born and what you remember about growing up during the Depression.
I was born October the 5th, 1925 in Lucasville, Ohio, down in southern Ohio along the Ohio River. We left out of there then at, I was about 11 years old, went to Atwater, Ohio, stayed there about a year and went back to Portsmouth. Then I was attended school there in Portsmouth. I was 18 on October the 5th, and I got my induction papers that afternoon, and I registered that morning for the draft. I got my induction papers that afternoon, or my questionnaire. November the 8th, I was in the Army. I went to Fort Thomas, Kentucky, from Fort Thomas to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. 17 weeks in field artillery. Had a 7-day delay en route to Fort Meade, Maryland. Went from Fort Meade, Maryland then to Camp Miles Standish for a staging area. We left Boston, went out Boston on the USS Wakefield. 6 days later we was in Liverpool, England. And I was over in England then at War Minister Barracks for D-Day. And then after D-Day, where they put me in the infantry and gave me 2 weeks infantry training, sent me over across, followed the front lines along, and I was at Luneville, France, when the 12th Armored went through. And they went into action then shortly after that, lost a few fellows, and I went up for Christmas dinner. And they was back for Christmas dinner when I went with the 12th Armored Division. But I don't know, is there anything else in there you want me to fill in before I get that far? Or?
Well, what did your dad do for a living when you were growing up?
Oh, well, like I say, I went to the Army at 18, come back out. I worked at Frigidaire in Dayton, National Cash Register. Then I went back to Portsmouth and worked on the railroad for a while. Then I went to Shelby, Ohio, and I worked at the U.S. Air Force Depot. And they closed that down. And then I went to Timken Roller Bearing. And I stayed there 31 and a half years. I retired May the 1st, 1990. And it just so happened that with the 12th Armored Division, we was down to Colmar. And the Timken Roller Bearing has a plant in Colmar. And they had a 50-year celebration. And I got a little piece of my, a little slip in my retirement check. And they wanted to know, looking for people who'd been there 50 years ago. So I called him up and told him I had been, and I'd like to have a video of the celebration. I'd buy one, and I'd give him my name and address. And he said, no, said, we'll get back to you. And a couple of days later, why, the fellow from the shop out there called me and wanted me to come out and talk to him. So I went out, and I talked to him for a few minutes, and he said, well, on the way out, I told my wife, I said, wouldn't that be nice if they'd just take us over there for the celebration? She said, you're still nuts. So I sat down and talked to the guy for a few minutes, and he said, hey, we got a big decision to make. He said, we want to fly you and your wife over for the celebration. I said, well, there's no decision to make. I said, when do we leave? So they took me over for me and the wife both for the celebration. And well, there's two couples. They picked another couple up in Canton, Ohio, and they put us on the corporate jet. Flew us to Boston, 747 to Zurich, and taxi cabbed us up to Colmar, and we had 5 days first class there at Colmar.
That's cool.
It was quite a celebration.
What did your father do when you were growing up?
He farmed.
Farmed?
Farmed, yeah. We had a little old patch on the hillside down there in the hill, and had a little tobacco farm. Did a little tobacco farming and gardening.
How many brothers and sisters did you have?
I got one brother and one sister. My brother dead, but one brother and one sister living.
What do you remember about like basic training? What was the biggest shock you had when you went into basic training? What do you remember most?
Oh, I don't know. It was pretty normal down in Oklahoma, Fort Sill, Oklahoma. We had a few rattlesnakes around you had to watch for, but other than that, well, it went along pretty good. A lot of 25-mile hikes, night hikes and stuff, but I didn't care for. The weather wasn't too great. It was in the winter. They had one of the biggest snowstorms they'd had down there in years, and we went to a training film, and they had a good movie that night. So to get back into the movie, you had to be there, but you had to get back and dressed up in your OD dress uniform. So as soon as they let out, we all rushed back to the barracks, changed clothes, and when we got back, the roof had caved in where we were sitting there. The roof was all down in the theater, the weight of the snow.
Yeah.
I remember that.
That's pretty wild.
You know, we just got out of there.
So when you got over to England and you were an artilleryman, why did they switch you to the infantry?
Well, they wasn't losing too many artillery. They was taking a lot of they were getting ready for D-Day, and they was taking a lot of different units where there wasn't a big casualty rate and switching them over to infantry. And they gave me 2 weeks infantry training, which was basically the same as the artillery training, only we didn't have the big guns. We just run and fall on your belly and crawl a while, and had to watch them don't break their leg in a rabbit hole over there. They had that limestone over there, and they had rabbit holes all over the place. And then I was D-Day. I was still in the artillery area at D-Day, and there was an anti-aircraft outfit. And we know D-Day was going to come, but we didn't know when. And about, I don't know, it was about midnight, 1 o'clock, they blew the whistle and everybody fell out, and they started calling off names. And this anti-aircraft outfit, they started calling them first. Of course, some of the guys were going out to town and they wasn't there and was on leave or whatever. They just wasn't available. So then they got down into the replacements. And he almost got to me. I was getting ready to holler here. And he said, fall back in and good night's rest because you guys got a hard day's work ahead tomorrow. Then the other guys left. They took them to Southampton, put them on a ship. Well, what they were supposed to do was go over, and there was a ship out in the channel waiting with anti-aircraft guns, and they was going to set up on the beach there on Omaha Beach. They were supposed to meet those guns and set up and protect the beach. Well, the next morning we gathered up all their personal belongings, put them in duffel bags, stenciled their names, and then put them on a truck and took them to Southampton to follow up with them. And then I came back, got in the infantry, and then later on I went across. And then I followed the front lines up, and I was at Looneyville then when the 12th went through.
And what unit were you with before the 12th?
I was in a replacement depot, replacement. I wasn't with anything.
You were just following the front line waiting to be picked up?
Just wherever. They lost my service records on the way over, and I could have went with a couple of other infantry divisions, but I got out of it. And when the 12th went through, I thought that was a nice outfit, and I thought I'd better, because I knew my luck wasn't going to hold out, so I went up and went with the 12th, which I was glad I did. It was a good outfit.
So you joined up there in Looneyville, and then where'd y'all go next?
Sir?
You joined up with the 12th, and then what do you remember happening next?
After, they took us up that morning. They was back, like I say, they was back for Christmas dinner. I don't know there wasn't Christmas, but it was back for their turn back. And I went with the 12th and the anti-tank platoon. And then we went, laid around for a few, on the front line, but we wasn't right. I don't remember doing any fighting right then. But then we went back and we went into Herlisheim. And you probably heard of Herlisheim from dealing with the rest of them. That was a big one. And that's where we picked up the name of the Suicide Division. The Germans made a counterattack there and captured a lot of the boys. I don't know just how many got killed. Most of them got captured. And I remember that one. And the ground cold, miserable.
Anything in particular you remember about Herlisheim?
I never did get into the town itself. I was on the outside, and that night there was some guys coming back. I said, what's going on? And they said, everything's all shut down up there. And I got with them and they came back. And then we stayed back there in a chateau or something, or headquarters. They said, you can't do no good up there tonight. So we stayed there that night. And the next morning they sent all the half-tracks back, brought the drivers back, and brought the cooks back, and we all went right back on the front line then, and we held them off that day, and then we got relieved at, I think it was the 36th Infantry Division come in and relieved us. And then we got out and got replacements, and then we went to Comar, down to Comar Pocket. And then after the Comar Pocket, we came back, went to Trier. We went up to Trier in the 3rd Army. When we was in Comar, we were with the French, the French Army. We was under their command down there. And then we went back up, we was under Patton up at Trier. And we painted off all of our insignias, and that's when we became the Mystery Division. We changed from the Suicide Division to the Suicide Mystery Division. And then we went, we started for Worms. We were supposed to get that all cleaned up, and then they was going to give us the word. Well, the paint never got dry. We was on our way. And we went to Worms, then we went down to Gimmershine, crossed the river, and I don't remember too much about that. I remember going through Augsburg. Of course, that's 4 months later. I remember a few little things along the way there. And I remember we pulled back, re-stenciled all of our names on you. And somewhere along the way, we was going down the Autobahn, and the 17th had the record for being for covering the longest distance in the shortest time under combat. Well, we got that record there, someplace along the way. I don't remember just where it was at. And then we went back to Heidenheim, and then we pulled occupation there in Heidenheim then till the 12th left, and I went to the 1st Armored Division, and then I stayed at the 1st Armored until I came home. So I didn't have any points. I was only 19 years old then, which didn't help on points. I wasn't married and didn't have any children. That didn't help on points. So I had to stay a while.
Did you do or participate in any of the liberation of the death camps?
The liberation of what?
Liberation of the death camps or the POW camps?
No, one of our units did. I wasn't in on that. No, one of the units did catch one, and we did catch some of our captured boys. I guess we recaptured some of them. They was marching them back, and we overrun them, and they got some of the boys back.
What do you remember about the Colmar Pocket?
I remember we went in there one morning. It was February the 3rd, I think it was. It was real dark, miserable, cold morning, and the town had been taken, but they were still shelling. They were still dead Germans in town. They were still dead horses and tanks and half-tracks and wagons and stuff burned up, blowed up, still burning, yeah, or smoking. And we pulled into town, and we pulled in, stopped, got out of the half-track, went in the house, and we stayed in this house. There was some Frenchmen in there. I remember that guy cussing and carrying. I don't know what he was saying, but I know he wasn't very good because he was really carrying on. He was trying to shave, and they'd shell would come in and knock his mirror down. And he was talking to the Germans. And we stayed there till about noon. We loaded up, and we took off and went south. We went down through another little town called Herlesheim. I remember a town called Herlesheim down there. It was just a little place. Nothing like that first one. And we got along a river. I think it was the Eel River. And then when we was in place, well then the French and there's a couple of American divisions there. They pushed the Germans into us, and we stopped them. And that's why they called it the Colmar Pocket. And that was the last Germans in France. From then on, all the rest of the fighting was in Germany.
Do you remember, like, in your unit, in your platoon, who your buddy was?
I remember the half-track driver was old Talmadge Fletcher, T.D. Fletcher, and the captain was Captain Ebbage. I remember him. And I think we had think the sergeant was Smith, but he got captured in Herlisheim. I think we lost him in Herlisheim. He got captured. But I ran into him at a reunion after that. And he lived here in Delaware, Ohio, just up the road here for a while. He worked at the Internal Revenue. But I think he was my sergeant. But they changed kind of every once in a while you get a new one.
Yeah. Anything in particular you remember about, what do you remember in particular about Patton's drive and being the spearhead for Patton's Army? How did y'all feel about being up
Well,
there
the
in
story
front?
come back one time that we was running out of maps, and he says, what the hell do you need maps for? You're going in the right direction. I remember that. Yeah, he was, we pulled along the side of the road one day. We was sitting in the front line was just you could hear fighting right ahead of us. And we sitting along the side of the road, and someone hollered, "Here comes Patton." And I remember him going by in a Jeep. He was standing up holding on the windshield, and he had those pearl-handled pistols, and he's standing up there, and he was headed up for the front line. Yeah, he was blood and guts. He was quite a character.
How did y'all feel about him? Did you like him?
I thought he was all right. Come to think of it, that's the best way to fight. You get him on the run, keep him. Don't give him a chance to dig back in again.
Yes.
You got to move them, keep them going, and that's where the 12th made out so good. We had some good leaders, and they kept things moving. When they got them going, they kept them going.
What do you remember about VE Day?
They wanted to get me drunk. Someplace along the way, we'd run into some Dago red wine, and they kept trying to get me drunk, and I don't drink or didn't drink or didn't smoke, and they swore they was going to get me drunk, but they didn't make it.
I'm sure they got pretty drunk themselves.
But everybody was happy. It was a big relief. A lot of celebrating. We was I don't remember where we was at. We was coming back. I think we pulled off the line 3 days before the war ended. And I think we was back at Augsburg or coming back through there when the war ended. I know we was repainting all the insignias back on the half tracks and the tanks and things, putting our patches back on. And but it was something else. It was different.
What do you remember about the Army of Occupation and occupying Germany and how the German civilians treated you?
The Germans treated us good. We didn't have any problem with them. We had an area we patrolled. I remember going out on patrols out of Heidenheim there. We'd go out and had a section we patrolled and guarded some rail depots. That's about it. And we're just hanging around killing time until we get back home. Of course, the division, the 12th Armored left. They put they just left on paper. They put all new people in it. Everybody just come back under the 12th, just a name. Like I come back under an anti-aircraft outfit's name. After I got out of the 1st, I went with them and come back. And when they get back, they just abandoned it.
What do you remember about the trip back?
That was the worst part of the whole trip. I was scared to death. I was more scared there than I was when I was on the front line. We left out of Antwerp, Belgium, and the first day out, we come down across the coast of Holland. You could see it was a beautiful day. And by noon, I was sicker than a dog. The next day, we went through the Azore Islands, and it was black, a huge storm ahead of us, and we hit a tidal wave. And there was guys that was going down the steps of the ship or going up the steps where they all ended up down to the bottom again. I was spared because I was in the bed. I was already in the bunk. I was so sick I couldn't move. but they was broken arms, broken legs, banged up, bruises. And then we was in that for about, we was 11 days coming back, and about 9 of them was under the water, out of the water. It was rough, very rough. The sailors, I got out of bed and went up and sat in the kitchen with the sailors because they was too scared. They was scared. It was on a Liberty ship, and they was afraid it was going to break in two. So I figured I put my life jacket on, went up there and sat with them, because if I see them going for the side, I was going with them. But I was still sick.
Where did y'all come back into, back in the States?
I came back into New York, and coming back into the harbor there, they had a tugboat with some American Red Cross girls on them. They was waving and a job well done, boys. And then when we went down the gangplank, there was the old Salvation Army down there playing. They had a couple of horns and a band and a drum. They was pounding on that and giving us coffee and sandwiches. Only I wasn't in any shape for sandwiches. And then we went from there to Kilmer, New Jersey. And it was about 2 o'clock in the morning when we got there. And we had to set our bag down on a number along the wall. It was like a big, huge warehouse. And you had to take this number and set your bag down so you could find it again. And they took us down and gave us one of the biggest steak supper, the biggest steak I ever seen in my life. And again, I wasn't in any shape to eat. But I took and nibbled on the edge of it. But oh man, I was sick. I'll never forget that trip. I go to Lake Erie fishing and still get sick.
So from there, did you get discharged, or did you stay in the military?
Well, there we got on a train and came to camp, I think it was Atterbury, Indiana. I got discharged out of Atterbury. And caught a Greyhound bus back to Portsmouth.
Is there any particular thing or any story that you remember or want to tell us, or anything that you...
No, not really, I guess. I just got up in the morning or was up all night, just did what you had to do. I wasn't looking to do anything outstanding, or I just had to do what had to be done. I went with the pack.
Did you get any questions? No, that's it.
Yeah, I like I say, there was nothing really under to keep warm. It was colder. And, man, it was one of the worst winters they had over there for years. I guess it's the worst one I could remember. And I felt something funny. I pulled my pants leg up, and there's blood all down my leg. Of course, I looked where it was at, and it had a little nick here on my knee, and it fell through my pants. I don't know where it's shrapnel or where I cut it on something when I fell or something. I don't know. And I never paid any attention to it, never cleaned it up, and I got an infection at it. And my pants leg swelled up. I couldn't even, my leg swelled up. They put me on a Jeep, took me back to a tent, medic, and penicillin had just came out. They looked at that and they gave me a double shot of it. Said that'll take care of it. They put me back on the Jeep and set me back up. I couldn't walk for a few days. I got to ride in a half track, but then finally went down and never had any more trouble with it. The old penicillin must have done the job. They didn't know what it was, didn't know what it was supposed to. They just know it was supposed to be good for infection. So they gave me a double shot. But that's the only nick I got out of the whole trip.
You were in anti-tank, correct?
What?
You were in anti-tank platoon?
Yeah, the anti-tank platoon. We had I had a little 57 millimeter they pulled behind the half track. And the only time I ever remember them using it, they shot a steeple out of a church one time. They thought we was going into a town, and we got stopped. And we couldn't get off because we was sitting on a levee or it was up on top of it. There's no way out. And the mortars was coming in real accurate. They was really dropping them right where they was doing some good. And someone seen something move in a church steeple. And they got this little gun out and cranked around there and shot the church steeple out, and here come a little storker flying out of her. It wasn't the guy who was after. But that's the only time I ever seen him use the gun. We set him up a couple of times. We never did shoot. We never fired the thing. It wouldn't have done any good against a Tiger tank anyway. because they didn't do any good till towards the latter part of the war. They got some 90s they put on them, then they could do some good then. But we had the regular machine gun on the half track, and then we had our M1 rifles. But I do remember it being cold, very cold. Because the first night I was there, the first night I was with the 12th, the first night I was with the 12th Armored Division, they said everybody's on guard. They had rumor out that there's paratroopers dropping in the area. And they put everybody on guard but the new men. There's 3 of us. Of course, I don't know, they went up to A and C, and I don't know where they went. I went to B. And we sleep in these old bombed out German barracks, burned out. And there was water in the floor, and we had blocks and boards laid up, and he was on the boards. And I had all my clothes on, except my overcoat. I was in my sleeping bag, and they said, everybody's on guard but the new men. So I went to bed, and about 2 o'clock in the morning, they come slopping in there. He said, you're on guard? And I said, not me, I'm the new man. He said, you're on what I'm looking for. I said, out of here, you're on guard. He said, put everything you got on, it's cold out there. So I put my overcoat on, helmet liner, my ear thing, my wool knit thing on my helmet liner. They took me out, and they stood me in a shadow of a big electric pole. It was almost like daylight. I was so bright and clear, moon shining, cold, bitter. And I stood in the shadow, and he said, I'll be back in 2 hours to get you. He's supposed to be back at 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock come, nobody showed up. 5 o'clock come, nobody showed. 6 o'clock came, I'm going in, because I was froze. My nose was all froze, icicles in there. I couldn't touch it, it was just sore from wiping it. So I went in, I walked in there, and they said, I said, there you are. I said, oh, I forgot all about you. That was a good start. But you couldn't leave your post in, because if you left your post and something had happened, they'd shoot you and they wouldn't mess with you. They didn't give you a chance to explain. So I stayed.
In basic, did y'all have to learn like the 3 general orders?
Yeah.
Like I'll never quit my post unless properly relieved.
Yeah, you learned all that. You learned, that was, if you left your post, that was treason. That was it.
Same ones they still teach us.
No, that was desertion. That was bad. That was bad news.
Anything else you can think of?
No, not really. I don't know if we can use this thing or use this or not. I don't know where it amounts to much.
It's good stuff. I mean, it's.
Well, like I say, there's a lot of it in there I can't remember. There's other things you can remember so clear. It's real vivid. And other thing, like that, after we crossed the Rhine River, there's a lot of stuff down through there I don't remember. I remember Augsburg. I remember going down the Autobahn that time when we set the record. I remember that because we was really moving. And I remember coming back and painting. I remember shooting the swans off of the lake in Augsburg. There's a nice, they had a real nice park there with a little stream in it. And I remember the guy shooting swans off the lake with a 50 caliber machine gun. That would make them jump. They were shooting everything out the side. We went through town wide open. And they were just shooting out both sides there, just firing guns, and right on down through we went. And then we went on into Austria. I remember that. And I come back and remember painting the stuff on the half tracks. Then I ended up in Heidenheim for occupation. But there's so much blank in there, I don't know why. Because some of it, is so vivid. Of course, that's been 53 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a while.
I really didn't. Just like when I went back to Colmar, they said, "Do you remember anything?" I said, "No. If I'd have thought I'd come back, I'd have put a notch in a tree." I don't remember anything. I didn't never expect to see it again. Really never cared about seeing it again. But I got a free trip, so I couldn't refuse it. But I had never been back and never even had any desire to go back.
Well, that's awesome.